Welcome to Meet, Act, and Part, a Masonic podcast hosted by Midnight Freemasons Greg Knott, Darin Larners, Todd Creason, and Bill Hostler. The views, opinions and experiences that are expressed by the hosts or guests as individual Freemasons do not reflect the official position of any Grand Lodge, appendant body, or Masonic authority to which the hosts or guests belong. And now on with the show.
Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Meet, Act, and Part. And you can see us on this one. So we're actually trying a new platform tonight. And we're going to try some video. So I hope you'll play along with us as we have this episode. I am one of your co-hosts, Greg Knott.
I'm Bill Hostler.
And I'm Darin Larners.
So welcome to our new platform. And video is probably something the three of us don't naturally have a face for. But hey, you're looking at us, so I hope we don't scare you off. Going to talk about social media tonight. I attended a conference recently, and we thought it might be kind of fun to recap some of what I did. So what I did, if you can see this, is I went to Grapevine, Texas, to the Shriners International Membership and Marketing Conference. And I have never been to one of those. I've been in the Shrine since 2008, but honestly haven't really been active until the last year or so. Darin and I are members of a new Shrine Club here in East Central Illinois, Salt Fork Shrine Club. Darin actually just came through the Cold Sands at the end of last year. And so he's a fairly new Shriner, but we're anyway getting our Shrine Club up and going. So I thought the Shriners have this conference, and so I signed up and went. And just, my quick impression is it was extremely well done. It was professional. I've been to a lot of conferences in my day with my job and other things, and it was equal to any of those. It was professionally ran. It was over the course of 3 days, and everything was on time. The food was really good. The service was good. Like the entire hospitality industry, the hotels are short-staffed, but they did a great job. It was at the Embassy Suites at Dallas-Fort Worth North, which is just outside of the airport. So what I thought I'd do is kind of go through the topics and actually have Bill and Darin kind of talk about those in the broader sense too, because if talking about marketing and membership, they're obviously interloped with one another, but they really are two distinct things. And, if you think about membership, obviously membership is the element of bringing in people. And to me, marketing is part of that message of getting the word out to them so the public knows who you are, what you are, and what you do, so that they may want to become members. So, it's funny. One of the first classes we had after the keynotes and all that was, they called it From Ordinary to Extraordinary, the Power of Wow in Event Design. And, what they did in that session was go through and talk about some key elements of if you're putting on an event. Because obviously, membership and marketing all kind of intersect perhaps at an event you're going to have. And, one of the key takeaways was, and Darin and I have learned this, and probably Bill from other organizations, Scouts in our case, start, stop, and continue. In other words, after you've done an event, go through and do an analysis of how it went. What would you do next time that you didn't do the last time? The stop, what didn't work that you're going to discontinue. And the continue was things that went well that you're going to, do again or improve on. So that was one of the first things we spoke about. So that was critical. Then we went on to talk about challenge is inevitable, defeat is a choice, membership acquisition, and onboarding. And I want to spend a few minutes on this one because we all know the proverbial thing. We get new members, they go through their 3 degrees, they come to one meeting, and we don't see them again. And then we look around at each other, we wonder, well, why didn't they come back? And probably if we would ask ourselves maybe even the start, stop, continue question, the answer might be right there in front of us. And so what they spoke about in this session really was mentoring, a pace at which to bring them through in not only the Blue Lodge degrees, but of course the Shrine. But I think part of their point was to keep in touch with them. And Bill, let me ask you, I mean, it seems like mentoring and membership retention in particular is a challenge for any organization today. What do you think we could be doing different or better that may help that?
If you sign a brother's petition, especially if you're a top line signer, I mean, you should be able to answer just about any question he would have. I would hope you could, but then again, hopefully your top line signer could answer the question you had. But I think that you're dead on something. I don't remember what you called it. Stop, drop, and roll? No, something
yeah,
like that.
Something like that. Start, stop, and continue.
Yeah, start, stop, and continue. Every lodge should be asking themselves that. I mean, if you stop and think about it, most every lodge, they're tickled to get new members, but then they do often leave. And nobody, if they even notice that they leave, they don't ask why. And many of the times it's because the existing members are like, well, I can't see why. I think it's great. We go up here, we have our chili or we have our ham sandwich, and we go in, we listen to the minutes, and we make wisecracks for an hour, then we leave, and we're good till the next pancake breakfast. And, they stop and think, well, maybe not everyone's involved in or interested in that. And so maybe if they would stop and consider that not everyone's interested in that, maybe they should, maybe they would consider, hey, maybe we should look into dropping some of these things and trying something different. It's one thing to get a member in the front door, but you got to keep them from wanting to slip out that back door before the meeting's over.
Darin, one of the things I took quite a few notes during all the sessions, but in these two in particular kind of went hand in hand, the events and then the member retention and such. But one of the things I wrote down was keep in contact with your members and see what they would like to do. And Darin, I know I've been with you a number of times. We've tried things at St. Joe Lodge, and sometimes they worked, and maybe more than not they haven't. But what do you think we could do better, in that keeping in contact, seeing what they want to do? What can we do different or better? Or the start or the stop concept we just spoke about.
Well, I think all lodges, most of all lodges, I'm sure there are a few that probably do a good job of keeping in touch with their membership, especially the ones that aren't showing up to lodge. So I think proactivity is something that a lot of lodges could probably do better. It seems even at meetings where a lot of meetings agendas are driven by putting out fires, if you've got an issue with your building that needs repaired. So a lot of even our stated business meetings are driven by these kind of external factors. So I think it really kind of boils down to having either the worshipful master being proactive enough or assigning a committee that's proactive enough to reach out to the membership or even those new members that have shown up and then, kind of disappeared. And I think, we spend so much time chasing people that haven't paid their dues. We should spend time chasing the people that are paying their dues, but just aren't, for whatever reason, showing up and seeing what's going on with them.
Or find out why they're not paying their dues. And there might be a reason.
Right. And, one of the things that was, when we kind of talk about in events is essentially you do events. Events could be, Blue Lodge case, meetings or dinners or whatever, you give people a reason to come, though. And I think more often than not, we give them reasons not to come. And, the cycle, once they quit coming, then it's, they get in the habit of doing other things and then forget about us. And then after 2 or 3 years, wonder why they're still, needing to send $50 for something they don't participate in. And I think that's part of it. And I think, Darin, your point's spot on, reaching out to some of those that do keep paying the dues and see if we can, maybe rekindle their interest and get them back, to a meeting and whatnot. I reached out I was texting with one of our St. Joe members today, Darin, and he hasn't been there in quite a while, and said, hey, come back, see us whenever you get time, no hurry. And, and he was just saying he'd been really busy and had quite a few, 3 or 4 kids, since he was raised. And, and so, hey, absolutely, life, that's there. And I said, whenever you get time, come on out, we'll be here for you. And so I think just making that touch point with him, was, that he was just glad to hear what was going on a little bit in the lodge and that kind of thing. So I think that's something we don't do very well at, is reaching out to the people, except for the ones that are showing up, in the meetings.
Yeah, everybody remembers you when your butt hits the seat, but then they don't think about you when you're gone, which is sad, because what if the brother is sick or he's really had some financial problems or something? Maybe, and that's when he needs his brethren the most. And if we don't know about it, there was one time when I was managing the Fort Wayne Temple, and I got a call one day from a lady. It was an elderly widow, and she called me, and she was so flippin' mad. And I didn't know the lady from Adam, and she called me. She says, I want you to call whoever and tell people whoever to take me off their mailing list. I don't want to hear from these people ever again, you Masons. And I'm like, well, ma'am, just calm down. Tell me what's happening. She says, my husband died 8 years ago, and I haven't heard boo from you people. When he died, I didn't get nothing from you people. I didn't get a thank you or a consolence. I didn't have a funeral for him. I didn't have any of this stuff. And all I ever get from you people now is wanting some type of money from you, like give us a contribution for this or contribution for that. And I'm sick of it. Wasn't there for him when he was dying, and you're not, and all you want to do is now. And I was gobsmacked. I ended up calling the Grand Lodge and said, I took her, information, say, make sure that this brother's, information, he died, and 8 years. He was still on, I don't know how, because he should have been, at least, if nothing more, dropped for NPD. But he was still on the rolls. Our Grand Lodge kept coming to him for a handout. And I mean, it could have been the Scottish Rite. It could have been a Shrine. Could have all of them been doing the same thing. But there's a good classic example of, we should have known, and we dropped the ball. And here's this widow could have maybe even used us, and we did nothing.
Well, here's a stat I wrote down, and they were talking about it, web inquiries. People will see, be a Freemason or .com, I think is the website, or there's a Shriner website. Currently, we are only converting about 24% of the membership inquiries into membership. And a lot of that is because lodges don't follow up on them. Yeah. And, that's part of the issue is, again, the lack of contact. And so here's a list of things, Darin, I'll have you weigh in on this. How can we touch people? Email, text, Facebook Messenger, Slack, Snapchat, and other new and emerging platforms. I mean, I guess the point is there's almost an unlimited amount of ways to reach out and touch people. Different generations, I suppose, want different things. But Darin, how can we do better? I mean, maybe is it just doing it? Are we making it too hard?
I think we can do better by not saying reach out and touch people, because that can get you into trouble these days.
Yeah.
But there are ways that one can communicate. Case in point, Greg, you set up this wonderful app for our Shrine Club. What is it? GroupMe. Sorry. GroupMe.
Yeah, GroupMe.
Which, allows all the members to be in one long string. So, that's a way for instant communication. I think that the days of the call 'em all are fading, especially even now that they put some of these new advanced spam call filters into place with a lot of these services. A lot of the call 'em alls that I normally used to get are being denied because it's being identified as a robocaller. So yeah, I think that there are emerging technologies like, Facebook Messenger or GroupMe or WhatsApp, I guess, is another messaging app that could be used in place of call 'em all. But I mean, once again, it boils down to having the personnel at your lodge that are going to be willing to, be doing the outreach. And without that, it really doesn't matter what you attempt to use or what you try to use, because at the end of the day, without, having somebody operate that application, it's not going to operate itself, at least yet.
Well, about a year ago, I was talking with the now Grand Master of Texas, and we were trying to set up something just on this very subject. And we were talking about it because they were going to set up, I don't know, I'm no longer working with them on it. They were going to set up their own individual beatexasmason.com.org, whatever they went website to go with. And they were going to put things in place because of this 25%. And I can think of even like 15 years ago, the Grand Lodge of Indiana, they took and they made a website and they circled 465 in Indy with billboards. And they put the web address on there. And everyone who actually sent in information, it never went anywhere because no one ever distributed it. It just died. So now, it's getting a little bit better now, but it's half the time that, the secretary's technophobic or he doesn't want to mess with it. But we decided to probably put it into place, have a DVGM, kind of like he's responsible to make sure the lodges actually, are checking up on this. And if they don't do it, have someone else like the DVGM talk to them or something like that. And actually, we were also talking about these different ways of communications because there's statistics. We did a marketing class. Facebook is pretty much for guys at our age these now. It's pretty much from 40 to dead. And so, that doesn't really touch the millennials or the Gen Zs. They're more into Instagram, TikTok, and WhatsApp, some of these other ones. And as for membership, we were advocating to, instead of putting Facebook ads up, to maybe invest the money in like a TikTok ad and YouTube ads, tailored specifically to men from 18 to whatever with specific interests. And that's the key, is you go into specific interests. Like if a guy looks into National Treasure, he gets a YouTube ad afterwards wanting, are you interested in Freemasonry? Contact the Grand Lodge of blah, blah, blah. Or TikTok's the same way, or what's that? But I also advocated to set up an SMS protocol to where a lodge can go up and they can text their members. They can sign up voluntarily. They go up, text Mason to 4567. And these, and then you can receive degree updates. You can receive cancellations. You can receive reminders of membership night, member nights, stated meetings, whatever. And it's only like pennies per text. It's available and it's affordable now. And you can do that. And MailChimp offers free email lists. So you don't even have to pay for that. If it's under 500, I think, which, I think most every Masonic lodge is going to be able to qualify for that. But there's 100 different ways that you can get your name out. The old robocalling, they're dead.
So there's a TikTok. That's from the Grand Lodge of Indiana.
Oh, they did do it.
Yeah, they did do it. Actually, I met a gentleman there that I think runs part of these. And so this one is probably not as wild as most of the TikTok videos I've seen. But it does, I think, Bill, to your point, gets that age demographic of where are they? Because you're right. they're not on Facebook. They're, that the generations that younger than us, younger than X and our Gen X in our case, they're on different
Right.
platforms.
Well, and the 15 to 25% of second video ad is cheap on that kind of platform. That's the thing we always worry about. And there are so many different platforms that you can advertise on. Yeah. In fact, Facebook.
There's your grandmaster.
Oh, there's Brad. Yeah.
There's Brad. So.
Or excuse me, most worshipful brother Bradley Billingsley. I'm sorry. But anyway, I was going to say, my train of thought derailed. But it's not brain surgery. It really isn't. You can do most of this for next to nothing. And all you have to do is be creative. And, if you've got grandkids or you've got kids, watch what they're watching, on the internet. Yeah. And see, it's really simple. When we did PR for the shrine in my home shrine club or shrine center, we did all kinds of stuff, and it benefits so many. It does membership, it does the hospitals, it does everybody. But I know I'm taking this over, but this has been an area that I've been really hot and heavy with forever.
Two of the points they made were follow up and communicate in as many methods as practical. And, Darin helped recently at the Shrine Club. We did a ceremonial in our local area. But one of the things I had done was I sent out, I think, 15 personalized letters to people inviting them. Now, my return, I got 4 or 5 of them that joined. I don't know if that's solely the reason they joined because of the letter. But what I did with the other guys, I've got a prospect list. Now, maybe some of them will probably never join. That's fine. But I've got them on a list, and they've heard from me. And, some of them, they're like, I just don't have time right now. Might be interested in later. And I'll follow up with them at some future time down the road. But I think, staying in touch with them and writing a handwritten note at times, even the old-fashioned ways are as valuable as the current ways. I think sometimes we think electronic is the magic answer for everything, and still a handwritten note or even a phone call or an in-person conversation are still just as effective as some of the social media.
Actually, with the millennials and Gen Zs, it's more personal because they are really into now stationery and letter writing and thank you notes and things. So it's actually probably more of a thing for them. For us, we're at the point now, I've had letters all my life. Big deal. Send me an email. I don't need. But, for the younger people, they do tend to take that more to heart than we do.
Darin, what do you think about TikTok? Is that a video that if we have a Master Mason has an intern, that he should have the intern focus on doing a creative TikTok?
Well, I have TikTok. My account's private. I just share some videos with friends and such. But case in point, our good friend Robert Johnson has a TikTok. I follow him, and he, puts out content on there as well. I personally, I played around with potentially doing a Masonic TikTok because, unfortunately, the ones that I've seen, and I don't want to talk ill of any other brethren, but to be quite honest, I don't know if they're regular or I don't know them from Adam. The guys that have, the ink on their face or look like they are auditioning for a horror movie. So it doesn't really, in my mind, cast the fraternity in a good light when some of these brothers are popular. Now there are other brothers that are popular as well that I've seen that are look more clean cut, but I think TikTok has a good potential to reach for outreach for some of these age groups. I think what we need to be careful, however, is that if we're going to do a Masonic TikTok, that we have people closer to their age doing it, because I think the last thing that these generation groups, the Gen Zs and the millennials, want to see is what they call the boomers out there. And unfortunately now anybody above 40 is a boomer to like my kids' generation. My oldest is 21, so even though I'm not technically a boomer, I'm still a boomer. But so if we're trying to reach that next a group of potential members that are, in that 18 to say 30 range, I think we would be well served by having our younger membership do this type of marketing material for them. One of the things that kind of, and I think the Northern Masonic jurisdiction's done a lot of great stuff, especially with their campaign to, beafreemason.org. I was, however, greatly disappointed in their last round of marketing materials because I felt like they missed a huge opportunity for outreach to some of the younger brethren near that target audience that I potentially would think they'd want to recruit into the Scottish Rite. And, I felt like the age demographic was off. I didn't feel that there was a lot of diversity in the videos, and some of the things that I thought would be attractive to the younger membership was kind of lacking in those videos. So I think we would have to be very careful to make sure that we take things like this into consideration. And it almost, and that's the thing that I don't know who they hired as their marketing firm and how much they paid them, but I'd personally be trying to get a refund from them because I think that they completely missed the mark with those series of videos. Just that's my personal opinion.
Yeah. So on a local level, I think, or any regional or whatever your marketing campaign is going to be is, I think before you even start one, you need to sit down and figure out who it is you're going to market to. And that could, include age as part of that decision, and craft a plan before you begin. I mean, how many Facebook groups have you guys seen pop up out of nowhere that you get invited to, and, you join and somebody's on fire and, not in necessarily a bad way. I mean, energetic. And they go for, a period of time and then they fizzle out because there's really no strategy to them, or there's no consistency in the long run. Point being, same with a marketing campaign. Now, Darin and I are near 4 little local lodges here in our communities. And we've talked about, maybe we should plan one for those 4 lodges. But before we'd even begin, we'd want to make sure there's at least a little bit of plan, a budget, and thirdly, and I think most importantly, a commitment for follow-up if you do actually have someone inquire. Because going back to that statistic I mentioned earlier, the 24% of inquiries turn them into members, that's not a very good response rate to some of our folks. So anyway, those are just some things I think before you would do any of those. Darin, to your point about the TikTok, I've not really been on it very much. I'm going to talk like an old guy now. I've seen limited uses for it. However, there was one gentleman at my table that was younger than me, and he was from, I think, Cincinnati area, and he's been very successful with it. But he's found how to do them, how to reach, the particular demographic he wants to do, and he's put the effort in to make him successful. And I think that's going to be part of the key for anything that's going to work. Okay. Well, Bill, you are probably you're almost a full-time internet Mason. What are you seeing out there for trends? Because you manage to post things for, Meet Acton Park, Midnight Freemasons, and a number of other things across platforms. I see it on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I don't know, probably a few others I'm not even on. But what trends are you seeing, or what's effective more so than others?
Well, to be honest, I've been kind of taking a break from social media a little bit here lately. When I post all those things, I have a program that I can do on my iPad that I post a story to all of them at once, and I don't even visit them, to be perfectly honest. So, but, lately, it's been, last one I was on it last time, it's pretty much just, it's the same old things over and over, which way do you wear a ring? Was so-and-so a Freemason? Or, there just doesn't seem to be a lot. And I know a lot of it is you'll get people who are new and they come up with something and, oh, this is gold. I didn't, and then they'll go up and they'll visit a Facebook group and they're new and they think they've just seen something nobody else has. And everybody else on there has either just seen it here a couple of years ago or, 15 years ago, and there's another one is like one of these is, can a Satanist be a Freemason? That's another one that'll get things started. But it just really hasn't been that much that I've seen. There was one that I was kind of curious about lately. Yesterday, the two sovereign grand commanders of the northern and the southern, the Masonic jurisdictions of the Scottish Rite, posted a proclamation saying it's all right to visit each other's jurisdictions, Masonically. And I'm thinking, was that a thing where we weren't supposed to before? Because I've been doing that for years. I was like, is this something new? Is this like, did Lindbergh just fly to Paris again or what? Is this something that I'm missing or, but no, it just seems like there's nothing new under the sun. And I don't know, maybe that's part of it. Just we're all stale and we need something to, unless there's another thing from one of these states that just tend to act up, once in a while. There never seems to be anything exciting going on anymore.
Yeah. Hey, Darin, where do you find, I know you and I've talked to you, you're not on social media as much as at least on Facebook and some of those as past days. Where do you find any value in any of the kinds of, discussions of a more in-depth nature of, semi-esoteric things or some of the, more deeper topics of Freemasonry? Are you finding that anywhere online or is it still just kind of where Bill alludes to?
I think it depends. I think there are some groups like Refracted Light on Facebook that, tend more towards the esoteric. It really, honestly, I think to Bill's point, a lot of what he's mentioning, I think, is the common fodder for the winding stairs Freemasonry group. So
hey, I'm one of the babysitters for that group now.
Yeah. So what does that tell you, Bill?
That tells a lot, yeah.
But in all seriousness, I will say that Alex Powers has been putting out some good content or asking some kind of thought-provoking questions on the Kansas Freemasonry group. He's kind of come up with some daily questions to ask everybody, which I think it's interesting seeing everyone's answers. As I said, Refracted Light. But I mean, to be quite honest, a lot of it is just kind of the stuff that Bill alluded to. So a lot of, the stuff that my interest in esoterics is essentially I kind of just self-study. I pick a topic and research and I don't really, I may share my findings, quote unquote, by writing something for the Midnight Freemasons blog on it, but I'm not really active on social media, as you said. So,
and I think that's another common denominator here is that we're not the only ones, because I've noticed that. I mean, we put out a lot of the same content on the Midnight Freemasons, but I don't know by the blog because I don't have access to that. But by what I share on those groups, on those platforms, our numbers are way down too of people clicking and visiting and stuff like that. So I don't know. I've kind of wondered if it just isn't. People are just kind of on either tired or of social media, or they're taking a break, or just kind of just.
So social media fatigue.
Yeah, there you go. That's a perfect way of saying it.
Yeah. I wonder, say the last couple of years when we were all home so much more and quite frankly, at times didn't have anything to do because there wasn't anything open or you couldn't go anywhere, that we all spent so much time online. And I know I get tired of it. Well, and things I've read about Facebook numbers have started to decline, even though there's still a very big number that, people have started to migrate away from it. I don't know that I'd call it a trend yet, but, you do wonder if we're at the beginning of something that people say, it really doesn't add that much value to your life overall. And then the time spent on it's wasted
I think Facebook will be MySpace in another 10 years. I think it's going to be pretty much dead as the dodo, to be quite honest with you. I think, now, obviously, Meta owns a lot more than just Facebook. You know, they own Instagram, they own WhatsApp, so I don't think they'll be hurting for money. But I think that as Bill mentioned earlier, I think Facebook is really kind of just now become a platform for, you know, there's a large number of millennials that still use it, Gen X, the boomer generation, but I think Gen Z, for the most part, I know neither of my kids have a Facebook account, to my knowledge, and I don't think that they do because there are other things that, you know, other places they go to, you know, get their content. YouTube has always been big with both of my kids, and I think also potentially Snapchat, TikTok now. So I think you're seeing these other kind of platforms replace Facebook, and I really kind of foresee it dying out probably in the next 10 years, or having a much lower potential, you know, audience.
Yeah.
Well, here's another thing about. Oh, I was just going to say, here's another thing about Facebook, and I don't talk about it much, but I do some advertising on Facebook. You know, for this show, just to get the word out, so that, you know, it makes it. You know, I know it's not going to make a huge difference, but I do put, you know, $20 here and there, just because I know it's going to make our, you know, get our name out a little quicker than what it would be organically. And I went to do that on our previous episode with Roger Van Gordon on Facebook, and they had said that they're going to take out specifics on their advertising. And so I thought, well, okay, I don't know what that means. Well, I went over there the other day, and every target demographic that we use, Freemason, Masonic, Grand Lodge, Masonry, Lodge, any keyword that we would use to draw someone who is interested in Freemasonry has been taken off there. The only ones we could use would be something like podcast or United States or something. And it's like, well, what's the point? I'm going to get people who could care less about Freemasonry. He's going to listen to Roger talk about Freemasonry, and they're going to be like, well, why do I care about that? What are you bringing that to me for? So I didn't bother, and I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of other people that's going to be doing the same thing. So it's like, are you people trying to kill your business, or what are you doing?
Well, one thing I was going to see what you guys think about is concerns of privacy that, you know, it's funny as sometimes on Facebook, you know, it'll say, here's your memories. And it's funny, I was looking at it today, and I was running for election for a local office 11 years ago. So I had a series of things out there, and it's funny, you know, all the comments and likes, they were so much tamer in 2011 than I see now. Now I don't want to post a lot of stuff out there anymore, because the amount of stupidity has grown, as we all know, exponentially. But I wonder if some of the younger people, and then eventually even us Xers and boomers, will say, you know, we've given up so much of our privacy to Facebook and other platforms that we're going to recoil from it and just say, we don't really need these anymore because they know too much about us. Don't you foresee that happen at some point?
Yeah, but the sneaky thing about Facebook is because Meta owns Instagram and WhatsApp or whatever, even though you may have your microphone disabled on your Facebook app or your Facebook Messenger app, if for some reason you have it enabled on Instagram, lo and behold, you'll start seeing ads for things that you're discussing on Facebook. So, you know, essentially we've already let the horse out of the barn on this and on privacy. And you know, when did the hubbub come out with the NSA? And
about a decade ago.
Yeah. So back then, I mean, he kind of blew the lid off of the mass surveillance that was happening at that point. And I doubt highly that it's declined. If anything, it's probably become worse. You read about all these massive data centers that the NSA is building out in the middle of the desert in Utah and other places, just these warehouses of data. I think the only true way to get any privacy would be to unplug and move out to the middle of nowhere and just live off the grid, because otherwise you are going to be essentially Big Brother is always going to be watching somewhere or somehow. So either it be Big Brother, big corporations, however you want to name it, that horse is already out of the barn and has been for quite some time.
Well, I, for one, welcome my new corporate and government overlords, but honestly, I'm not one that cares about my privacy. My life's been an open book. Tammy you let people know that? Yeah, what do I care? It's like when back in the day, it's like, aren't you worried about people going to get hold of your credit information? I said, are you kidding? If they can do something with it, that's the way I screwed it up. I want to meet them and find out how they did it. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And, I pretty much, I've started out with nothing and I pretty much still got most of it. And so, why worry,
Well, it'll be sure interesting to watch it in the next decade or even the next 5 years, actually, or less, and see what transpires, because I don't think it's on a sustainable arc anymore. I think the novelty wore off quite a while ago. The thing is, it's like, for all the amount of communications we have in present day with, the phones and all that other, how many other communication methods it's essentially destroyed, the handwritten letter, for the most part, you don't get too many anymore. Your local community newspaper has dried up. Now even your local radio stations are starting to dry up. People having face-to-face conversations have dropped dramatically, and Darin has talked about some of that in, some of the presentations he's done on, lack of friends and all that. So I don't know. I think at some point it's got to circle all the way back around, and people are just going to say, let's just have face to face again. I'll tell you one story. We were in a hallway conversation at work this week, which I've hardly done in the last 2.5 years because we haven't been there. And somebody walked by just by chance, and they worked in the IT area, and we got to talking, about email. And he goes, well, we could just turn it off at the campus level. I said, wouldn't that be wonderful? I said, I've actually worked here long enough that I actually remember the days when, email didn't consume 8 hours of your day or sitting there waiting. And we actually did get up and go talk to people. And you think what a change that would be if you could turn off email or some of these instantly. And didn't Facebook have an outage a year or two ago? And that was all the big buzz about how people, oh my gosh, my Facebook doesn't work, so I've actually got to go talk to somebody.
But then it'll go back to paper memos, and then we'll have to reply with paper memos. And then
So maybe there's some middle ground in there somewhere. I don't know, but I don't know. I never thought I'd be the old timer, but I guess that's what happens when you keep increasing that age. You think about how it was, and maybe it was better. I don't know.
Well, I think as we see AI continue to grow and grow, I wouldn't be surprised to see more of for lack of a better term, a bunch of Luddites kind of come out and rally against technology, because, and I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm cynical by nature, but I grew up with movies like The Terminator and all these other movies warning us about AI and the dangers of AI. So, even before Terminator, or around the same time as Terminator, you had War Games, and you had all these movies warning us about AI, and here we are on the threshold of where we have a lot of AI that's running in the background that you may not even know about. All of the automated call centers now, when you call a corporation and you have to speak a certain thing into a phone, that's all AI bots. That's all algorithms. The world's being we're slowly ceding more and more control to these things. And, who knows? I tend to, like I said, I tend to be cynical. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see a Luddite movement. And, when we decide to go burn the computers, I'll be right there with them, I guess.
If you guys get a chance, and if you have Amazon Prime, go watch the series Upload. There's actually a group of Luddites in there who's trying to stop civilization and technology. It's just like you described it.
Yeah. It's like, I wish we could pick and choose sometimes, because I think of all the positive things in the medical field that have advanced, science and technology and the ability to heal people and, techniques that are easier on your body, etc. We don't want that to stop, but yet, you're right. Some of these other things, and maybe it's even the platform here we're using tonight, maybe that is an example of it. It's good and it has drawbacks at the same time. I wish we could pick and choose. We can't, because that is one thing humans do, is advance knowledge and advance, civilization, whether we like it or not. But I do wonder if we're not almost to that precipice where have we gone too far on some of the things. So I don't know. It is pretty creepy at times. So, and, to bring it back to our local lodge level, to me, Darin and I, we've got a meeting tomorrow night as we record this podcast, and will it be exciting? Probably not, but it'll be good to see some people though, and I think that's still added value. I mean, you don't get to see people like we did, and I think getting people to get them out again into the habit of talking and seeing each other in person is where there's an opportunity for Freemasonry and the Shriners and the Scottish Rite, the York Rite, all of our groups. That's what they're designed to do, is bring people together and talk about things and learn from each other and enjoy a fraternal bond of brotherhood together. And maybe we could use social media to reinforce that positive aspect that, the media is the advertising, but the value is seeing each other in person. So I don't know. Any other thoughts, you guys, on any of this thing? I do want to touch on one final topic that there was many more that we talked about at the Shrine Conference, but one of them I think kind of goes along with what we're talking about here. In this case, they had a session on crisis management in the media, and they gave showed an example of there was a shrine meeting, and they were talking about a circus, wherever their local circus was, and PETA showed up at this meeting. And of course, PETA is not for the Shrine Circus. And the person from PETA got up and, started, saying certain things. And of course, stopped the middle of the meeting. And, a couple of guys in the room jumped up and, said some things and this, that, and the other. And, all of a sudden then, it just gets a little contentious. And there was a second person there also filming it. And the presenter's point was, this is now on YouTube forever. And so he was saying, and this was just an example, but his point was, with the speed of social media today and just, the internet and how fast things spread in general, you always need to think about what it is you're doing, how you're saying it, and when you're saying it. But then if something doesn't go right, to have also thought ahead and, have a plan, if possible, to how you handle such things. So let's say there's a tragedy in a lodge. It's not even a malicious thing. A lodge, really, we should probably have a plan that says, this person is the spokesperson for the event. They're the contact. And these kind of things, to think about these ahead of time. And so that you're not in a reactionary mode, or as he also pointed out, you really don't have to comment on anything. You can acknowledge, the media, we just, declined to comment. But his point was to, in this day and age, be prepared, for any event that could happen and the need to respond to it. Because if not, people are going to respond for you, and it may not be in a positive manner. So Darin, we've seen that with some of the, things that have happened and lodge windows being broken, and even in our local area, there's things that have happened that lodges and grand lodges had to be prepared to respond to media inquiries.
Yeah, and I think it just it goes back to just watching how you act. And now we have this other, it used to be you had to watch how you acted if you were a Mason in the community and a well-known Mason. I just got done doing that breakdown of Dwight Smith's Whither Are We Traveling? And Dwight really hammers on the point that, how we reflect ourselves in the community impacts us as a fraternity. And I think even more so now, how we act in social media impacts us as a fraternity. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You're not being helpful if you are, if you have a Masonic square and compass on a hat that you're wearing in your profile picture, but yet you're, posting racist or, things that are antithetical to the philosophy of Freemasonry on your page or on other pages or in public forums or what have you. So, absolutely. And I also think that a lot of Grand Lodges have a social media policy, but I don't think that they enforce it. I think they really need to, and I don't know how it's enforceable. It's muddy waters, but at the end of the day, I think that if you identify somebody and you see them as if, say, for example, they're a Grand Line officer and they're out on Facebook or social media saying things that are, contrary to what the beliefs of Freemasonry are, I think that there should be some sort of repercussions, and I don't know that that's always happening. So
I think the point, Darin, you're making is use good judgment, and not only because you're a Freemason in general. I saw a local news story here yesterday that an area police officer was gotten a lot of flack for racist comments he put on Twitter. Well, he thought he'd created an anonymous profile, and there was a group that, through whatever means, went out and figured out who he was and then reported him to his police department. And then, of course, the TV and that kind of media picked it up. And then all of a sudden, it was a firestorm. Well, he ended up resigning. And, point being is there is no anonymity on the web, and what you say, people are watching, and it could come back to haunt you in some form. So, keep yourself within due bounds, as we are taught within the fraternity. So, well, we're getting long on the hour here. I'm going to see if Bill and Darin just kind of have any final thoughts. Bill, anything to wrap up?
Well, PR is just, it's many different things, but each one of them are vital to a lodge. It could mean, good reflection on what your lodge is to the community. It's also a way to bring in new members. Try to take advantage as much as you can. There's communications that you could use. There's just so many things that you can do. And you can go back and look at some of our past episodes. We had one where we talked about websites and communications and stuff. If you have any questions, that's a wealth of information. And get JP's book, Ken's book, because that would definitely help you in that process.
Darin, any final thoughts?
No, just thanks to the listeners again, and thanks to you too for taking the time out to chat.
Yep, good conversation. And again, we appreciate everybody that's listening in. Trying a new format here tonight on a new platform, so hopefully you'll enjoy it. But until another episode of Meet, Act, and Part, join us then, and we hope you have a good day.
Thank you for listening to Meet, Act, and Part. For more information about our show, visit our website at www.meetactandpart.com. While there, please consider supporting the show by sponsoring us on Patreon. Until we meet again, may we meet, act, and part.